cheap race hustler. Those three words sliced through the hearing chamber like a knife. Donald Trump, the 47th president, hurled the insult with a smirk, confident, untouchable, as if history itself bent to his will. But Jasmine Crockett did not flinch. She knew this moment was bigger than pride. It was about a nation where over 60% of Americans say they no longer trust their leaders, and where 1 in 3 Black citizens still report being treated as second class in their own country. The insult was meant to silence her. Instead, it ignited her. Because this wasn't just a hearing, it was a reckoning. One woman standing face to face with the most powerful man in the nation, and the world was watching to see who would break first. The silence before the storm was unbearable. Every breath, every shuffle of paper, every flash of a camera felt like a countdown to an explosion. Then it came. Donald Trump leaned forward, his voice sharp, cutting through the air like shattered glass. Cheap race hustler. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Journalists froze mid-sentence. Even the chairman's gavel paused in the air. The words carried not just contempt, but centuries of history, race, power, and the arrogance of unchecked authority. Trump smirked, basking in the shock he had unleashed. His eyes scanned the room, daring anyone to challenge him. Jasmine Crockett didn't blink. She rose slowly, her posture radiating steel. For a moment, the room felt suspended, time frozen between insult and response. Then her voice cut through the tension like lightning. "You are the living disgrace of America," she declared, her tone resonant, unshaken. "And today, I will strip your mask before the world." The words slammed into the chamber with the force of a hammer. Reporters jolted forward, pens flying across notepads. The crowd in the gallery erupted into whispers and gasps. The clash was no longer theoretical. It was alive, raw, and merciless. Trump's smirk faltered, just slightly. His jaw tightened. His hand gripped the table. He had thrown the first stone, but Jasmine had turned it into fire. The chairman pounded the gavel. "Order! Order!" But his voice was a whisper against the roar of tension that consumed the chamber. Trump snapped back, louder this time, his voice echoing through the marble walls. "You're nothing but a nobody, pathetic, desperate, trying to use my name to make yourself famous." The words dripped with venom. Spit flew as he leaned across the microphone, his finger jabbing the air toward Jasmine like a weapon. Jasmine's eyes blazed. She didn't cower, she didn't retreat. Instead, she stepped forward, her presence filling the space with unshakable gravity. "Famous?" she shot back, her voice razor sharp. "The only thing you're famous for is lying to the American people, cheating the system, and staining the office you sit in." The chamber gasped again, louder, like thunder rolling over stone. Cameras clicked furiously. The words had landed. Direct, brutal, undeniable. Trump's face reddened. His lips twisted into a sneer. "Lies! Fake news! Witch hunt!" His voice cracked with fury, louder, harsher, each word spit out like a curse. But Jasmine pressed harder, her words measured, deliberate, her gaze unwavering. "Look at you," she said almost calmly now, as if diagnosing a wound. "Screaming, pointing, blaming everyone but yourself. That is not strength, Mr. Trump. That is fear. And fear is the only truth you cannot hide." A hush fell. For a moment, even the furious president had no words. The insult that began as a weapon had been twisted, reflected, magnified. The journalists were on fire, typing, tweeting, broadcasting. Across the country, millions of viewers leaned closer to their screens, breathless, hooked by the raw spectacle. The chairman tried again. "Order! This is a hearing, not a—" But even he knew it was useless. This was no longer a hearing. It was a battlefield. Trump slammed his hand on the table. The sound cracked like a gunshot. "You will regret those words," he roared. "No one talks to me like that. No one." Jasmine tilted her head unflinching. "Get used to it," she replied, "because today, the truth talks louder than you." The room shook with the collision of voices. Every exchange escalated, each insult like a strike of lightning, each rebuttal like rolling thunder. It was no longer politics, it was survival. The air buzzed with electricity as if the walls themselves were alive with conflict. Each second tightened the coil of tension, promising it would snap at any moment. And still, Jasmine stood her ground. Each word she spoke landed with precision, each phrase weaving justice into the fabric of the chamber. She wasn't just answering insults, she was rewriting the script, turning every sneer into evidence, every jab into a confession. Trump's face glistened with sweat now, his fists clenched, his voice rising in octave with each denial. But beneath the bluster, a flicker of unease sparked in his eyes. The world was watching, and for once, it wasn't laughing with him. The clash of insults became symphonic, a duel where every note was sharper than steel. Jasmine's fury burned like a torch. Trump's rage thundered like a storm. Together they forged a scene that history would not forget. And as the gavel pounded once more in vain, the truth was clear. This was no longer about decorum or debate. This was war. If this story makes your heart race, if it makes you crave justice as much as Jasmine Crockett demanded it that day, then don't miss what comes next. Subscribe to Harrison Stories and be part of every chapter in this battle for truth. The gavel still echoed when Jasmine struck again. Her words were not questions. They were blades, honed to pierce through arrogance and denial. Mr. Trump, how many times have you lied to the American people about your taxes? Trump's head snapped up, eyes flashing. Fake news! Fake news! His voice boomed across the chamber, rattling nerves like thunder rolling down marble halls. Jasmine leaned closer to her microphone, unbothered by the storm. How many times have you called it a witch hunt, only to run from the very facts laid before you? Witch hunt! Trump roared, his fist hammering the desk. His face burned crimson, the veins in his neck strained as he leaned forward, his voice drowning out every other sound. The chairman pounded his gavel again, his voice cracking. Order! Order in this chamber! But no one was listening. The world was watching history unfold, live. Jasmine pressed harder, each syllable deliberate, each sentence slicing deeper. How many businesses have you bankrupted while calling yourself a genius of success? How many broken workers stand as proof of your greed? Trump shouted over her, spit flying. Lies, disgusting lies. You're pathetic, a nobody. This is a disgrace. But every interruption made him look weaker. Every outburst exposed the cracks in his armor. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every twitch, every drop of sweat, every flinch. Across the globe, viewers leaned closer to their screens, unable to tear their eyes away. Jasmine didn't stop. How many women have come forward, Mr. Trump? How many times have you silenced them with money and threats? Do you deny them all? The question landed like dynamite. The chamber erupted in shouts, gasps, murmurs of disbelief. Reporters' hands flew across keyboards, headlines forming in real time. Trump's voice cracked into a shriek. Fake! Fake! Fake news! You're disgusting! This whole thing is a sham! The chairman slammed the gavel, his hand shaking. Order! Order! But the room was no longer his to control. This was Jasmine's arena. She stepped into the storm, her voice cutting through Trump's roars like steel through smoke. You can scream fake news 1,000 times, but you cannot scream away the truth. Not today. Trump lunged forward, pointing a trembling finger. You're a disgrace. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're nothing. Nothing. Jasmine stood taller. If I'm nothing, then why are you so afraid to answer me? The chamber froze. The words hit harder than any insult. Trump blinked, his mouth opening but no sound coming out. For one instant, just one, the mighty man faltered, and the world saw it. The silence was broken by a flood of shouts, half the room cheering, half jeering, all of it chaos. The chairman slammed his gavel again, his voice desperate. This is a hearing, not a circus. But no one heard him over the roar. Jasmine pressed the advantage. Mr. Trump, tell us, why did you call foreign leaders to beg for favors? Why did you threaten those who wouldn't bend to your will? Why did you put your own ego above the Constitution you swore to protect? Each question was a blade. Each question stripped another layer of his carefully built myth. Trump shouted himself hoarse, his words dissolving into a mess of rage and denial. Fake. Witch hunt. Hoax. This is illegal. You can't. Jasmine cut him off, her voice louder, stronger, carrying over his chaos. The American people deserve answers, not tantrums, not slogans, not your endless lies. Answers. The chamber shook with applause and outrage, colliding like waves in a storm. Trump banged his fist, his face twisted in fury. You're enemies of the people. You're all against me. You hate America. Jasmine shot back without hesitation. No, we love America too much to let you destroy it. The words detonated like thunder. The crowd gasped. The cameras zoomed in. The internet exploded. For a moment, Trump froze, stunned, cornered, his bluster caught in his throat, and Jasmine stared him down, unflinching, unyielding, her every word driving deeper into the cracks of his crumbling facade. The duel of voices had become more than an argument. It was a test of wills, a battle of truth against power, of fire against fury. Neither side would retreat, and the world was hooked. Jasmine reached into her folder, her movements slow, deliberate, almost theatrical. The room hushed, cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. Then she slammed the stack of papers on the table with a crack that echoed off the marble walls. "Mr. Trump," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You are not just a liar, you are a serial liar, and here is the proof." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Reporters leaned forward, screens glowing as they streamed every second. Trump's face went scarlet, his jaw clenched. He tried to laugh, but the sound came out hollow, brittle. You don't deserve to even speak my name," he barked, his finger trembling as he pointed at her. Jasmine didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on him, steady as steel. "You can try to silence me, but you cannot silence the truth. You are a coward, Mr. President, a coward hiding behind rage and insults." The word coward cracked the air like thunder. The chamber erupted, half in gasps, half in cheers. Trump lurched forward, his chair screeching against the floor. His voice cracked into a roar. "How dare you? I am the greatest president this nation has ever had. You're nothing but a loudmouth disgrace." Jasmine lifted the first document high, her hand unwavering. "This," she said, her voice ringing, "is a sworn testimony from your own staff, men and women who watched you twist facts, peddle lies, and betray the very oath you swore." Trump pounded the desk. "Lies! They're all liars." Jasmine laid down the next sheet. "This is a financial record, signed and filed, showing your debts hidden under shell companies while you preached about your so-called wealth." The audience gasped again, louder this time. The air vibrated with shock. Trump's roar turned desperate. "Witch hunt! Fraud! Illegal!" But his voice cracked, weaker now, drowning beneath Jasmine's steady tone. She placed the final piece of paper on the stack, her hand lingering just long enough for the cameras to capture every angle. "And this is a letter from foreign leaders, condemning the pressure you tried to exert for personal gain. Proof that you put yourself above America." Trump's face contorted. He slammed both fists on the table, rattling the microphone. "This is an outrage! This is treason!" His words spiraled into guttural shouts, incoherent with rage. Jasmine leaned forward, her voice low but lethal, carrying to every corner of the chamber. "The only treason here is a president who betrayed his people." The chamber exploded. Senators whispered furiously. Reporters nearly leapt from their seats. The internet blazed with headlines faster than anyone could count. Trump clutched the edge of the desk, his knuckles white. You think you can humiliate me? I built this country back up. I'm stronger than all of you." Jasmine's reply was a dagger. "Strong men don't hide behind lies. Strong men don't call truth a witch hunt. Strong men don't run from accountability. You are not strong. You are weak. You are a coward." The words hung heavy, like a verdict etched in stone. Trump howled, his face twisted with fury, his body shaking as he pointed again and again at Jasmine. "You're evil. You're a radical. You're nothing but filth." But each insult landed flat. Each shout only exposed him further, unraveling the image he fought to protect. The cameras lingered, feeding every second to millions of viewers who watched in awe as the most powerful man in America unraveled under the weight of one woman's unshakable resolve. And Jasmine, calm, unyielding, stood as the storm around her raged. She lifted her chin, her voice a steady flame against the chaos. The truth does not bow to power, not yours, not anyone's. And today, the truth stands taller than you. The room shook with a mixture of applause, boos, and gas. But the verdict in the public's eyes was clear. Trump had been struck where it hurt most, not by fists, but by facts, by courage, by the humiliation of his own unraveling. And as the chamber dissolved into chaos, Jasmine Crockett remained standing, the living embodiment of defiance. The world could not look away. Trump leaned back in his chair, chest heaving, face glowing red. But instead of retreating, he twisted his lips into a sneer. "You think you're pure, Jasmine? Let's talk about your life. Let's talk about your failures, your scandals, the skeletons in your closet. People forget. You're nothing more than a desperate woman looking for attention." The chamber gasped. The words hit like a slap, cruel and personal, dragging the fight out of politics and into blood. Jasmine's eyes flared. She rose to her feet, the chair scraping across the marble with a sharp screech that silenced the murmurs. Her hand shot forward, finger aimed squarely at him. "You just admitted it," she thundered, her voice shaking the rafters. "You have nothing left but your cowardice. That's all you are, a man stripped of dignity, lashing out like a cornered animal." The chamber erupted. Senators shouted over one another. The chairman hammered the gavel until his knuckles whitened, but it was useless. Trump shot to his feet, jabbing his finger back at her. "You're pathetic, a fraud. Nobody even knew your name before you started throwing dirt at me. You're a sideshow." Jasmine cut across him without hesitation. "And yet, here you are, screaming at me, trembling before me. If I'm a nobody, Mr. Trump, then what does that make you?" The room exploded in gasps and nervous laughter. The insult sliced sharper than any statistic. Trump slammed the desk. "You don't deserve this seat. You don't deserve this country. You're ungrateful. You're divisive. You're—" Jasmine's voice ripped over his like a siren. "Ungrateful? Divisive? Coming from the man who divided this nation more than anyone in modern history? From the man who thrived on hate, who poisoned our conversations, who made cruelty a brand?" Trump roared. "Lies! All lies!" they shouted over each other, words colliding like thunderclaps, rage echoing off every wall. The chairman's voice was lost, drowned by the sheer force of their clash. Cameras swung wildly, capturing every second. Networks plastered the moment across millions of screens. Twitter ignited in flames, hashtags rising like sparks from a bonfire. Every viewer felt it. This was no longer a hearing. It was combat. Jasmine leaned forward, her voice a blade slicing through his shouts. "You call me desperate? You call me pathetic? Then explain why every time I speak, you can't help but scream over me. That's not power. That's fear." The words struck deep. For a split second, Trump's face twitched, his mask slipping. But he roared louder, forcing the mask back on. "I fear nothing. You're trash. You're irrelevant. You're nothing without me." Jasmine's eyes burned like fire. "Then remember this. The only legacy you'll leave behind is shame. Not greatness. Not leadership. Shame." The chamber shook with noise. Shouts, applause, jeers, all blending into a storm of chaos. Reporters typed furiously, headlines blazing. "Crockett calls, Trump a coward on live TV. Hearing descends into screaming match. America watches its leaders collide." Trump slammed his palm on the table, leaning in with a snarl. "History will remember me, not you. I will always be bigger than you, stronger than you, greater than you." Jasmine stood tall, her voice ringing above the cacophony. "History doesn't remember the loudest, it remembers the truth. And today the truth is standing right here." The chamber fell into a stunned silence for half a heartbeat. The words cut through the noise, piercing deeper than insults, deeper than rage. Trump's chest rose and fell, his fury boiling, but no retort could match the blade Jasmine had driven. The duel had reached its peak, two voices locked in combat, neither yielding, neither breaking, each clash more explosive than the last. And as the hearing spiraled further into chaos, The world sat on the edge of its seat, breathless, desperate for what would come next. Because this was no longer just a battle between two people. It was the battle for America's soul. And if you felt the fire of this clash, don't just watch, stand with it. Subscribe to Harrison Stories and witness every moment of this fight for truth. Jasmine slammed her hand on the desk, her voice erupting like thunder. You can insult me all you want, Mr. Trump, but you will never escape the truth. The chamber froze. Her words rang against the marble, vibrating in the bones of everyone present. She reached into her folder and pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. Its edges were frayed, its weight heavy with consequence. She raised it high for the cameras to catch, the flashbulbs sparking like lightning. This, Jasmine declared, her voice carrying across the chamber, is a sworn log, your own aide's notes, recorded in the very rooms where you plotted, lied, and schemed. Every word a dagger to your falsehoods, every page a record of your betrayal. A wave of gas surged through the crowd. Reporters scrambled, their fingers flying over keyboards. Screens glowed as breaking headlines exploded across the nation. Trump's jaw tightened. His hands gripped the desk so hard his knuckles whitened. For a flicker of a moment, just a flicker, he said nothing. The silence was louder than any roar. Jasmine seized it. She opened the notebook, her voice slicing the air as she read aloud. The president instructed us to delay the release of critical documents until after the election. The intent, as stated, was to protect his image and bury the facts. Signed by name, dated, undeniable. The chamber erupted. Gasps, shouts, murmurs. Chaos boiled over in every corner. Trump's face twitched. He stammered. That's fake. It's fabricated. His voice cracked, breaking like glass under pressure. Jasmine's gaze burned into him, unwavering. You can deny me. You can deny the people. But you cannot deny your own staff. They wrote it. They lived it. And now the world hears it. Trump snapped, his roar tearing through the room. Lies, all of it. This is a Democrat conspiracy, a hoax, another witch hunt. They've been after me since day one. They want to destroy me because I'm strong, because I'm the only one who can save America. He banged the desk with his fist, the sound sharp and violent. Spit flew from his mouth as his words spiraled into fury. The chairman hammered his gavel desperately. Order! Order! But the room was no longer under his command. Jasmine leaned closer, her voice low but searing, steady as a blade. No conspiracy forced you to lie. No hoax wrote those notes. No Democrat signed your name. This is you, Mr. Trump. Your corruption, in your own words. Trump's face reddened deeper, almost purple. His shouts turned shrill. You're evil. You're sick. You're twisting everything. The people know the truth. They love me. They know I'm innocent. But the cracks showed. The mighty figure, once untouchable, now sputtered like a cornered man fighting shadows. The crowd sensed it. The tension thickened, sharp as glass, as if the very air might shatter under the weight of fury and revelation. Jasmine turned another page, her tone relentless. Here, the president suggested pressuring allies with withheld aid unless they offered political favors. Do you deny it? Do you dare? Trump shouted over her. I never said that. It's all lies, all lies. His fist slammed again, rattling microphones, shaking the desk. His voice no longer commanded. It shrieked, desperate, panicked. The chamber buzzed with raw electricity. Senators exchanged wide-eyed stares. Journalists whispered frantically. The people watching at home felt their hearts hammering as if they were in the room themselves. The clash had grown dangerous, volatile, a storm seconds from breaking into violence. Jasmine refused to step back. She lifted the notebook higher, her voice blazing. You built an empire of lies, Mr. Trump, but justice does not bow. Not to your wealth, not to your rage, not to your name. Today you face it. Trump's roar shook the chamber. I will not be humiliated. This is treason. He pounded the desk so violently the microphone screeched, feedback piercing the room. The chairman's gavel cracked against the block, over and over. Enough! Enough! But his voice drowned beneath the battle. Jasmine stared into Trump's blazing eyes and delivered the strike. You call it treason, I call it truth, and no amount of screaming will save you now. The air trembled, the tension coiled, ready to snap. Viewers across the globe leaned forward, breathless, as if the chamber might combust under the heat of two wills colliding. The atmosphere was no longer political. It was primal, a duel of survival, and everyone knew the breaking point was coming. Jasmine inhaled deeply, her eyes narrowing with razor-sharp intent. She was not finished, not even close. Slowly, deliberately, she turned toward the double doors at the back of the chamber. Bring in the witness. The words sliced through the air like a bell toll. A hush crashed over the room. Journalists froze mid-keystroke. Senators stiffened. Trump's head jerked up, his face blanching as if he'd seen a ghost. The heavy doors creaked open. Every camera pivoted. A lone figure stepped forward, an aide once buried in Trump's inner circle. Someone who had seen everything. Gasps rippled like shockwaves. Phones lit up instantly. Twitter feeds exploding with wild speculation. Trump's breath hitched. Sweat glistened at his temple. He muttered under his breath, shaking his head. No, this can't be happening. Jasmine's voice was ice. You thought your empire of silence would hold, Mr. Trump, but truth always finds a voice. The witness approached the stand. The oath was taken. A trembling hand on the Bible. A voice steady but taut with weight. I was there, the witness began, eyes sweeping across the chamber. I heard him. I wrote it down. I kept records because I knew one day the lies would shatter. And today, they shatter. Trump shot up from his chair, red-faced, veins straining at his neck. This is a setup. This is a disgrace. This person is a nobody, a traitor. His fist slammed the desk again, rattling the microphones. This is all lies. You're done. You hear me? Done. The chairman barked for order, his gavel nearly breaking against the block. But the chaos was unstoppable. Jasmine leaned in, her voice sharp with venom. Look at you, the mighty man who built himself on bluster and shouting, reduced to panic the moment the truth stands in front of him. Trump's chest heaved, his voice cracked into a shriek. This is fraud, all fraud. They can't do this to me. The witness didn't flinch. Calmly, they unfolded a document, their hands trembling but resolute. This is his directive, signed, dated, with instructions to suppress evidence, manipulate allies, and bury the truth. I kept the original. The courtroom detonated. Gasps, screams, flashes. 1,000 keyboards clattering at once. Trump stumbled back into his chair, his face ashen now, his lips trembling without sound. Jasmine's eyes glittered. You called it a witch hunt. You called it a hoax. Tell me, Mr. Trump, does your own signature look like a hoax to you? The words slashed through the chamber like a guillotine. For a heartbeat, silence swallowed everything. Then Trump snapped. You think you can destroy me with this garbage? He shot to his feet, shouting at the cameras, pointing his finger like a weapon. America will never believe it. The people love me. They know the truth. They know you are the liars. But the chamber no longer belonged to him. Screens across the nation lit up with the witness's testimony, Jasmine's words, and Trump's unraveling rage. On Twitter, hashtags exploded in real time. Nakam the notebook, Dakpan, truth exposed, to Trump meltdown. Millions watched in living rooms, bars, phones, and trembling hands. Some gasped in horror. Others cheered. All were riveted. Jasmine seized the silence that followed. Her voice was calm, solemn, yet carried the weight of history. No amount of screaming can erase ink on a page. No rage can undo a signature. And no power, no matter how vast, can bury justice forever. The witness lifted their chin, eyes steady despite the storm. I swore an oath to tell the truth, and today I kept it. Can he say the same? The question landed like thunder. Trump's hands trembled, gripping the desk. His mouth opened, but only ragged breaths came out. The mask of invincibility, the armor he'd worn for decades, was cracking before the world's eyes. Jasmine stepped closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper, the kind that sliced deeper than any shout. You always feared this day, not because of Democrats, Not because of conspiracies, but because deep down you knew the truth would one day catch you. The chamber felt ready to combust. Trump's scream tore out like a wounded beast. Lies, lies, you're all enemies. You're all against me. But no one looked convinced anymore. The witness stood firm. Jasmine stood taller. The crowd online surged louder. And the world knew something irreversible had just broken. Trump's fist slammed down on the mahogany desk with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. The microphone shook. Papers scattered into the air. Then it happened. Bullshit! Absolute fucking bullshit! The words ripped from his mouth, raw and unfiltered, broadcast live into millions of homes. Gasps erupted across the chamber. Reporters jolted upright. A senator covered his mouth in shock. Trump didn't care. He was past caring. His face was crimson, his hands trembling with rage. You people think you can humiliate me? I built this country's success. I made America strong. And now you, cheap frauds, dare to sit there and judge me? He jabbed a finger across the table at Jasmine, spittle flying as he bellowed. You little nobody! You're nothing without me. Nothing! Jasmine didn't flinch. Her voice cut through the hurricane like a shard of ice. The louder you scream, Mr. Trump, the clearer your fear becomes. Every curse is proof of your collapse. The chamber roared with overlapping voices. Some senators shouted for order. Others hissed under their breath. The chairman pounded his gavel over and over, his face twisted with desperation. Order! Order! But it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with bare hands. Trump leaned forward, knuckles pressed against the desk, chest heaving like a cornered beast. You think you're exposing me? His voice cracked, then rose again in fury. You're exposing yourselves. This is all a sham, a witch hunt, a disgrace. He kicked his chair backward with a screech. The cameras caught every second, his towering figure looming, his voice booming, every syllable dripping with venom. Jasmine, still seated, only tilted her head, her expression calm, almost pitying. You've just confessed what the world already knew, that behind the bluster, there's nothing left but panic. The crowd inhaled sharply. The line hit like a punch to the gut. Trump's roar shattered it. Shut up! Shut the hell up! The chairman slammed the gavel again. Mr. Trump, you will control yourself or you will be removed from this hearing. But Trump wasn't listening. His tirade spiraled, faster, louder, unhinged. You're all liars, every single one of you. The media, the Democrats, the so-called witnesses. It's all fake. You think people out there believe this circus? They love me, millions, millions, and they'll tear you apart for this. Cameras zoomed tighter. Networks ran banners in real time. Breaking, Trump erupts with profanity on live TV. Across America, living rooms went silent, as if the entire nation was leaning closer to their screens. It wasn't politics anymore. It was spectacle. A verbal boxing match where every word landed like a jab, every insult like a hook. Trump hurled another string of curses, his face contorting with fury. Jasmine finally rose to her feet. Slowly, deliberately, she leveled a finger straight at him. You've lost control, Mr. Trump, and the whole world just watched it happen. The room froze. Every microphone picked up her words. Every broadcast carried them raw, uncut. Trump's mouth opened, but no coherent sound came out, just ragged, furious breaths. The chairman rubbed his forehead, sweat beading, before banging his gavel again. This hearing is spiraling into chaos. Control must be restored. But control was gone. The atmosphere pulsed like an arena on fight night. Two figures at the center, one roaring with desperation, the other standing steady with poise. Every viewer felt it in their bones. This wasn't just politics. This was survival. Trump pounded the desk again, his voice raw. This is treason. You're all committing treason. Jasmine's reply was calm, devastating. No, Mr. Trump, treason is betraying the people who trusted you. And that is the one crime you cannot shout your way out of. The words landed like a finishing blow. Gasps, murmurs, phones flashing everywhere. On Twitter, hashtags exploded again. RAR, Trump meltdown, losing control, verbal boxing. Across the world, millions sat glued to their screens. Some cheered Jasmine's defiance. Others shook their heads in disbelief at Trump's unraveling. But none could look away. The spectacle had crossed into history, and for the first time, even his most loyal defenders looked uneasy. The gavel fell again, but the echoes of Trump's curses still rang through the chamber, through the cameras, through the conscience of a nation. This wasn't just a fight. This was a collapse, broadcast live, and everyone knew there was no turning back. The chamber still vibrated with the aftershocks of Trump's profanity when Jasmine slowly reached into a folder, her hands steady as stone. She pulled out a thick packet, stamped with 3 bold letters that cut through the air like steel. FBI. Gasps rippled across the room. Reporters shot forward in their seats. Cameras zoomed closer. Jasmine placed the document flat on the desk in front of her microphone, then lifted her eyes directly to Trump. "Mr. Trump," she said, her voice crisp, deliberate, impossible to ignore, "this is an official FBI record, detailing patterns of deception, obstruction, and abuse of power under your name." The chamber went silent. Even the chairman's gavel froze midair. Trump let out a laugh, loud, forced, jagged. This garbage? This is nothing. A stack of lies from corrupt agents who've hated me from day one." He leaned back in his chair, spreading his arms wide as if mocking the weight of the evidence. His smirk returned, but it trembled faintly at the edges. Jasmine didn't blink. She leaned closer to the microphone. "Then prove it." Trump's grin faltered. "Prove it, right here, right now, under oath. Swear before this committee, before the nation, before the world, that every word in this FBI document is false." The words cut sharper than any blade. Trump's eyes flicked toward the document, then back to Jasmine. His jaw tightened. "I don't have to play your little games," he spat. "This is a witch hunt. I don't take oaths from frauds like you." But Jasmine's voice rose over his, fierce, commanding. "You swore an oath when you took office. You swore to uphold truth, law, and the people of this country. And yet, here you stand, afraid of the very thing you claim to defend." The silence that followed was electric. Trump opened his mouth, and for the first time in the entire hearing, nothing came out. The seconds stretched into eternity. Reporters scribbled frantically. Cameras locked in on his face, searching for words that would not come. Senators shifted uncomfortably, aware of the seismic weight of the moment. Jasmine didn't let up. Her voice was steady, unwavering. "Is it fear, Mr. Trump? Fear that one oath, one true oath, would shatter every mask you've ever worn?" Trump's hands gripped the edge of the desk. His knuckles turned white. The room seemed to hold its breath. He tried to laugh again, but the sound cracked, hollow. "This is a circus," he muttered. "I won't dignify this setup." But his voice no longer carried the booming dominance it once had. It was thin, frayed at the edges. Jasmine straightened, her eyes never leaving his. "History will remember this moment, not because you were accused, but because when faced with the truth, you chose silence." Gasps echoed again, sharper this time. Trump's silence had become the headline. A silence heavier than any outburst. A silence that screamed guilt louder than any denial. Phones buzzed across the chamber. Social media exploded in real time. Trump silent. Yashakar oath dodge. Chautar final blade. Across America, viewers whispered to themselves in disbelief. For years they had seen him dodge, deflect, shout down opponents. But never, never had they seen him struck into silence. The chairman lowered his gavel slowly, his voice hushed. This committee will recess for 5 minutes." But everyone knew the break was meaningless. The damage was done. Trump sat rigid, his lips pressed tight, his eyes blazing with fury he could no longer channel into words. Jasmine gathered the FBI papers, her hands still steady, her face calm. She didn't need to say more. The silence she had created was enough. It was the silence of a man cornered, the silence of truth finally breaking through, the silence that cut deeper than any insult ever could, the final blade, driven deep, live before the entire world. And as the camera zoomed in on Trump's stone-faced glare, One fact crystallized for millions watching at home. The emperor had been stripped bare. And so Trump did what he had always done when cornered. He twisted himself into the role of the victim. He leaned forward, fists trembling on the desk, his voice hoarse but loud enough to rattle the microphones. This is the deep state. This is their plot. They've been after me since day one, trying to destroy me because I represent the people, the real America. His words boomed through the chamber, aimed not just at the committee, but at every camera lens, every television, every living room. He painted himself not as the accused, but as the betrayed hero. I'm the one they fear, he thundered. I gave jobs, I gave safety, I gave pride back to this country. And what do? They fabricate lies, they unleash crooked agents, they try to silence me. They want to silence you. His finger jabbed outward, not just at Jasmine, but at the invisible millions he imagined standing behind her. The old playbook: divide, distract, dominate. But Jasmine had studied every page of that book. She rose slowly, her presence calm, unshaken, her eyes locked on him as if he were a storm already spent. Mr. Trump, she said, her voice soft but cutting, if this is truly a conspiracy, then answer me this. Why does every fact point in the same direction? Why do witnesses, documents, and recordings align like pieces of the same puzzle? The chamber stilled. Trump scoffed, waving his hand. Because they're all in on it. They're puppets, every one of them. Jasmine didn't blink. And yet, when given the chance to swear under oath, you refused. The words hung in the air like a guillotine. Trump's face twitched. He tried to summon another roar, another tirade, but Jasmine's calm voice kept slicing through, stripping away every excuse. You shout about the deep state, she pressed, but can you explain why the FBI files show your own signatures, your own words, your own orders? Did the deep state forge your handwriting? Did they fake your voice on recordings? Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Reporters scribbled furiously. The cameras caught every flicker of discomfort crossing Trump's face. He bellowed again, his words tangled, frantic. Fake! All fake! You people are blind! You're corrupt! You're enemies of the people! But the louder he screamed, the quieter Jasmine became. And that silence, measured, deliberate, cut him deeper than any insult. Mr. Trump, she said finally, almost in a whisper, the only enemy of the people is the one who betrays their trust. The chamber exhaled as if struck. Trump slammed a fist on the desk. Lies, all lies, she's twisting everything. His voice cracked, the pitch wobbling, desperation bleeding through the rage. But Jasmine simply stood, hands steady at her sides, her voice like cold iron. Rage does not erase evidence. Yelling does not rewrite history. And fear, your fear, is the clearest truth we've seen today. It was psychological chess, live on national television. Every time Trump lunged with fury, Jasmine countered with calm logic. Every time he tried to play martyr, she exposed the contradictions. Every second that passed, the power dynamic tilted. Viewers across the country felt it. On one side, a man unraveling, clinging to the illusion of control. On the other, a woman sharpening truth into a blade he could not dodge. Social media split into two raging camps. Trump loyalists flooded the internet with defenses, echoing his cries of conspiracy. But millions more watched in stunned silence, realizing that for the first time, the noise could not drown the truth. News banners rolled across screens. Trump claims deep state plot. Crockett strikes back with facts. The nation felt torn down the middle, as if the hearing had become more than politics. It was destiny, a battle for the soul of America itself. Inside the chamber, the tension was unbearable. Trump's shouts were growing hoarse, his voice cracking like old timber. Jasmine, still calm, refused to meet chaos with chaos. Her final line for the day landed with surgical precision. You can scream about shadows, Mr. Trump, but shadows vanish when the light shines through. And today, this chamber is filled with light. The room erupted, half gas, half applause, half disbelief. Trump clutched the edge of the desk, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with fury. But the nation had seen it. The psychological war was no longer his battlefield. It belonged to Jasmine. And in living rooms across America, millions whispered the same thought. The tide had turned. Then it happened. The screens flickered. A file was cued. And suddenly, through the microphones, through the booming sound system of the hearing room, came a voice unmistakable to every ear in the nation. Donald Trump's voice. Raw, unedited, recorded. At first it was a single line, cold and cutting. They'll never find out as long as we keep them quiet. The room froze. For a moment no one breathed. Even the cameras, even the lights seemed to lean forward, hungry for the fallout. Trump's face drained of color. He shifted in his chair, lips parting, but no sound came out. For the man who had built an empire on words, on insults, on noise, suddenly silence was more damning than anything else. The playback continued. The recording stretched on, undeniable. Trump's voice weaving conspiracies, backroom dealings, instructions that sounded like a blueprint for deception. It was all there. No editing tricks, no media spin. Just his own voice betraying him. Gasps erupted across the chamber. Senators whispered to each other like frantic spectators at a prize fight. Some covered their mouths. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Trump finally slammed the desk, his knuckles white. "This is fake," he shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of desperation. "This is AI, this is doctored garbage." But the trembling in his hands betrayed him. His eyes darted side to side, searching for allies, searching for exits. And Jasmine Crockett, calm, steady, unflinching, leaned into the microphone. "Mr. Trump," she said, her voice slicing through the chamber like steel, "are you denying that this is your voice?" Trump stammered. It's a setup." "Answer the question," Jasmine thundered, slamming her palm against the table. "Is that your voice? Yes or no?" The sound reverberated like a gavel. For the first time, Trump looked small. His usual bluster shrank into a nervous cough, his words tumbling out in a weak stream. "It doesn't mean anything. People say things all the time." The crowd erupted. Journalists scribbled furiously. The hashtags began flooding the digital ether. Grosser, cotton tape. Kachern, Trump exposed. No way out. Jasmine's eyes never left him. She could smell blood in the water, and she pressed harder. "You built your career screaming fake news. You called whistleblowers liars. You told America you had nothing to hide. But here, under oath, when confronted with your own voice, you shrink, you tremble, you beg us to look away." Her voice rose, fierce and unrelenting. "But America is looking, the world is watching, and you, Mr. Trump, cannot hide from yourself." Trump's jaw clenched. Sweat pooled at his temples. He tried to force out a laugh, but it died halfway, crumbling into a choked cough. You people are sick," he rasped, but even his insults had lost their venom. The tape ended with a click. Silence. A silence so heavy it pressed against the walls, pressed into the chests of everyone present. And then Jasmine delivered the dagger. She leaned forward, her voice almost a whisper, but amplified by the stillness. "Swear under oath, Mr. Trump. Swear this isn't your voice. Swear it to God. Swear it to the American people." The camera zoomed in. His lips trembled. His throat tightened. And for one electric moment, Donald Trump said nothing. Not a word. The silence was louder than any scream. All across the nation, in diners, in living rooms, in crowded bars, people leapt to their feet. Cheers erupted in some corners. Outrage exploded in others. The country split at the seams as if a collective nerve had just been struck with lightning. And in the hearing room itself, it felt like history was being burned into stone. The chairman's gavel pounded for order, but order was gone. Reporters surged. Cameras flashed. Senators barked over one another. The entire proceeding spiraled into chaos. But through it all, Jasmine sat there, steady, unshaken, watching her opponent crumble in real time. The man who had once dominated stages, crushed rivals, and bent crowds to his will, now sat hollow, cornered, and exposed by his own voice. And America could feel it. This wasn't just a political clash anymore. This was reckoning. And once it had been televised, once millions had seen him falter, choke, and freeze on live TV, there was no undoing it. No spin doctor, no campaign rally, no midnight tweet could erase what had just been burned into the nation's memory. This was the moment, the shock that split reality. And for Donald Trump, there would be no going back. But the man who had built his empire on defiance wasn't about to surrender quietly. He straightened in his chair, the sweat still glistening at his hairline, and forced his voice into a thunderous roar. "You think you've won?" he bellowed, pointing a trembling finger at Jasmine. "You think this circus makes you righteous? You're nothing but a pawn of the radical left. You'll regret this. Every single one of you will regret this." Gas rippled through the chamber. Even seasoned reporters, hardened by years of political theater, leaned forward in disbelief. The xiao kuoi, Trump's last desperate weapon, was not defense. It was attack. He turned the room into a battlefield, flinging accusations like grenades. "This isn't about truth. This is about power. They've been after me since day one. The deep state, the FBI, the media, and now this cheap race hustler paraded in front of the cameras." His hand slashed the air toward Jasmine, venom in every syllable. "They want to silence me so they can silence you, the American people." The audience at home split like tectonic plates. To some, it was proof of his paranoia. To others, it was the rallying cry of a wounded warrior. Social media exploded, hashtags colliding in real time. Shash, Trump threatens. Shash, Jasmine stands tall. Shasham, final showdown. Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. Instead, she rose slowly from her chair. The movement was deliberate, almost cinematic. Her voice, when it came, was calm. So calm it cut sharper than any scream. "Mr. Trump," she said, "the louder you shout, the clearer it becomes. You are not fighting for truth. You are fighting for yourself." The room hushed. Her eyes locked on his, steady as iron. "You threaten me. You threaten this chamber. You threaten the American people. But the only thing you are really afraid of is justice. And it is coming, whether you like it or not." Trump pounded the desk again, his voice cracking. "Lies! Every word out of your mouth is a lie. You want chaos? You'll get chaos." But even as he shouted, his tone wavered. The edge of desperation bled through the anger, like a mask slipping. Jasmine leaned in closer to her microphone. Her voice dropped low, forcing the entire room to lean in with her. "You can scream about deep state. You can smear me. You can invent conspiracies. But facts are facts. Evidence is evidence. And the truth doesn't bend to your rage." She paused, letting the silence do its work. "Every word you speak tonight, Mr. Trump, only proves one thing. You are terrified of accountability." The chamber erupted, not in chaos, but in electricity. The words hung in the air like a verdict, sharp enough to slice through steel. Trump's face twisted. He tried to launch another tirade, but his voice betrayed him. The cracks were there. Hesitations, falters, half-finished insults that collapsed under their own weight. The chairman's gavel struck again, but no one was listening anymore. The real battle wasn't in procedure or rules. It was psychological. And Jasmine was winning. Across America, living rooms turned into war zones of opinion. Families shouted over each other. Bars exploded in cheers or curses. The nation wasn't just watching a hearing, it was watching a reckoning, a public crucifixion in real time. And yet, in the chamber itself, something far more intimate was unfolding. Trump's threats no longer filled the air. They bounced back at him, hollow echoes. Every accusation sounded weaker than the last. Meanwhile, Jasmine's words landed like hammer blows, measured, precise, merciless. "Threats won't save you. Lies won't protect you. The truth doesn't need to shout. It stands." Her voice didn't shake. Her body didn't waver. She was a pillar in the storm, and the contrast was brutal. Trump flailing, Jasmine towering. Viewers described it later as a duel without fists, a sword fight of words where every sentence cut deeper than steel. And in that moment, it became undeniable. The once invincible showman was unraveling under the weight of his own fury. Every glare, every slur, every desperate jab only pushed him further into the quicksand. Jasmine's composure made it worse. The calmer she became, the more frantic he looked. The more control she displayed, the more obvious his lack of it became. It was the perfect inversion. The predator had become prey. The tension was unbearable, electric, suffocating. No one dared blink. No one dared change the channel. Every viewer knew they were witnessing history. This was no longer about politics. This was about power stripped raw, about truth staring rage in the face and refusing to bow. And as Trump's voice cracked again, sputtering into another half-coherent rant, Jasmine stood there, calm as stone, her words cutting through the storm. The closer justice gets, the louder you scream. But screaming won't save you, Mr. Trump. Not tonight. Not ever. The chamber fell silent once more. The cameras zoomed in, and the nation held its breath. Because in that silence, something irreversible was happening. A man once untouchable was being cornered. A myth was being dismantled. And America was watching it happen, second by second, live on screen. Then came the sound that split the air. 3 sharp strikes of the gavel. The chairman of the hearing leaned forward, voice grave, words deliberate. After reviewing the evidence presented today, this committee concludes there is sufficient ground to open a major case against former President Donald J. Trump. The chamber froze. Every breath caught. Every eye widened. It was official. The words hung heavy in the air, as if the very walls were struggling to contain their weight. Trump blinked rapidly as though trying to process what had just been spoken. For a man who had bulldozed through scandals, investigations, and accusations for years, this was different. This was not punditry, not speculation. This was declaration. His jaw clenched, but no words came. The cameras caught it, the moment of silence from a man who had always had something to say. It was only a heartbeat, but in that heartbeat, America saw him stripped bare. And then, like a lion cornered, he lashed out. "This is a sham, a disgrace. You're tearing this country apart," he roared, his voice echoing off the marble columns. He pounded his fist on the desk again, but this time it sounded weaker, more desperate. The chairman did not flinch, nor did Jasmine. She rose from her chair, slow and steady, like a warrior savoring the moment of victory. Her chin lifted, eyes unblinking, shoulders squared. She turned toward Trump, not to taunt, but to mark the moment. "You can scream all you want," she said, voice firm enough to carry through the microphones and into every home across America. "But today you've been held accountable. Today truth has spoken louder than your lies." The room erupted, not with chaos, but with reaction. Some gasped, some cheered, some cursed. Trump shook his head violently, mouthing words the microphones couldn't catch. His face was red, his gestures frantic. But it no longer mattered. The tide had turned. Jasmine gathered her documents with deliberate calm. Each movement was symbolic, an act of finality, of closure. She did not glance back as she placed the papers into her folder. Instead, she stood tall, pushed back her chair, and stepped forward. The cameras followed her as she walked the length of the chamber. Click, click, click. Each step echoed like a drum beat, the cadence of a victor leaving the battlefield. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions, cameras flashing in bursts of light. But Jasmine didn't break stride. Her face was resolute, unreadable, a soldier walking through fire without fear. Behind her, Trump sat slumped, muttering under his breath, hands gripping the edge of the desk like it was the last thing anchoring him. It was a split-screen moment for the ages. Jasmine, head high, striding toward the exit like the embodiment of defiance and truth. Trump, trapped in his own fury, shrinking inside the very chamber he once commanded. When the heavy doors closed behind her, the hearing chamber seemed to deflate. The storm had passed, but the aftershocks were only beginning. Across the nation, living rooms and offices erupted. Phones lit up. Twitter crashed under the weight of trending hashtags. Streets filled with protesters, some chanting Jasmine's name, others waving Trump's banners in rage. Cable news anchors fumbled to keep up, their voices trembling with the recognition that they were narrating a moment that would be studied for generations. The nation was split wide open. One half hailed Jasmine as a hero, a warrior of justice who had dared to confront the most powerful man in America and draw blood. The other half screamed betrayal, claiming the system was rigged, that Trump was a victim of persecution. In Washington, though, there was no split. There was only the sound of dominoes beginning to fall. Committees convened, prosecutors whispered, advisors scrambled. For Donald Trump, the political cliff's edge was no longer distant. He was standing on it, one shove away from the drop. And Jasmine? She didn't celebrate. She didn't gloat. As she stepped into the swarm of flashing cameras outside, she simply said, "This is not about me. This is about America, and the fight for justice has only just begun." Her words swept through the crowd like electricity. The cheers, the boos, the chants. They merged into a roar that rattled the streets of the Capitol. A nation shook, a world watched, and in that trembling moment, everyone understood. This was not the end. This was the beginning of a battle that would scar America's history forever. In the end, this battle was never just between Jasmine Crockett and Donald Trump. It was about truth standing against deception, courage against arrogance, and justice against the hunger for unchecked power. History reminds us that lies may roar, but they cannot outlast the quiet strength of integrity. And in every generation, it takes ordinary people who dare to speak boldly, to hold the mighty to account, to keep democracy alive. The lesson is simple. When faced with darkness, choose to be the light. If this confrontation shook you, don't just move on. Pause, reflect, pass it forward, talk about it. Share it with someone who still believes justice must have a voice. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where every truth is dragged into the light, no matter how loud the lies. Ring the bell, because the next reckoning isn't quiet. It's fierce, and it may just change the way you see power and accountability. This story is a fictional dramatization, inspired by real struggles and real courage. Any resemblance to actual people or events is coincidental, or a mirror held up for public reflection. Thank you for watching. Justice is never given, it's fought for. This is Harrison Stories.